the American Academy of Pediatrics is corrupt. That brings us to the letter that they sent. Let me bring this up. And I think we have this, Matt. I think we have this on the screen too. You guys can see it. So it starts by saying, Dear Attorney General Garland, on behalf of the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, and the Children's Hospital Association, collectively representing more than 270,000 physicians and more than 220 children's hospitals across the country. Very critical, by the way, that they noted this at the beginning, because this shows you that this is not isolated to a few crazies or a fringe within these organizations. It shows the breadth of this, the entirety of this corruption. We write to you, they say, to urge you to investigate the organizations, individuals, and entities coordinating, provoking, and carrying out bomb threats and threats of personal violence against children's hospitals and physicians across the United States. So let's stop right here for a second and acknowledge the obvious here, that threatening or conducting violence against an individual or against an organization, a hospital, or a doctor because of what they're doing is wrong. That's obvious. That's hardly even needs to be said. The reason that it needs to be said is because what the AMA and the AAP and the Children's Hospital Association are doing here in this letter is they're conflating two different things. They're conflating real threats of violence, which are wrong, which conservatives across the board unequivocally condemn as wrong. They're conflating that with just words condemning the actions that the doctors are taking. And you can see this. This is illustrated in this sentence when they say, we write to you to urge you to investigate the organizations, individuals, and entities coordinating, provoking, and carrying out bomb threats and threats of personal violence. Now, the sentence would be fine if they said entities coordinating and carrying out bomb threats, but you'll notice the word that they put in between, the word provoking. What does that mean? We urge you to investigate the individuals provoking bomb threats and threats of personal violence. What is provoking? Now, to the AAP and the AMA and the Children's Hospital Association, provoking a threat of violence is simply discussing the transing surgeries performed by doctors and hospitals on children across our nation. These twisted medical individuals think that if you tweet about it, if I make an episode about it or a video about it saying, listen, the Boston Children's Hospital does this to children as young as 3 years old. They perform hysterectomies and mastectomies on healthy young girls. They chemically castrate little boys with puberty blocking medication, quote unquote. That's wrong. According to the radical left, that is provoking an attack because it's ginning up fear, it's ginning up hate, it's ginning up transphobia. That is in the first paragraph of this letter. They're conflating speech with violence. They go on to say, from Boston to Akron to Nashville to Seattle, children's hospitals, academic health centers, and physicians are being targeted and threatened for providing evidence-based healthcare. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt this letter every sentence because there is a problem in every single sentence. Evidence-based healthcare. What is that? Evidence-based healthcare. Lupron, which is the drug that we colloquially know as a puberty blocker. I don't even like that phrase because there's no such thing as, their favorite phrase is putting a pause on puberty. You can't do that. It's irreversibly damaging to children's bodies. But Lupron is not FDA approved for children with gender dysphoria. Lupron is FDA approved for several things, for elderly or middle-aged men with prostate cancer, for the chemical castration of sex offenders, and for children with precocious puberty. But Lupron is not FDA approved for children with gender dysphoria. So to use the phrase evidence-based healthcare is untrue. It's false. This is an experimental use of this drug on children for this reason. So evidence-based healthcare, I don't know what the bleepity bleep they're talking about here, but they're trying to invoke the science in order to make their political point. They say these attacks have not only made it difficult and dangerous for institutions and practices to provide this care, they've also disrupted many other services to families seeking care. In one hospital, a new mother was prevented from being with her preterm infant because the hospital's neonatal intensive care unit was on lockdown due to a bomb threat. We can all agree that's awful. Children's hospitals across the nation have substantially increased security in addition to working with local and federal law enforcement, both on their main hospital campuses as well as their ambulatory delivery sites, in order to ensure the safety of patients, families, and medical staff who work there. If only they put the same amount of effort into securing the safety of the children who are transed at their hospitals. It's awful if this happened to this one mother, but it certainly is an isolated incident. This is not happening as a pattern across the country. Whereas the transing of children, the mutilation of the bodies of young children suffering from the mental disorder, gender dysphoria, that is a pattern happening across these countries. In addition, they say some providers have needed 24/7 security. Children's hospitals and their medical staffs continue to face increased threats via social media, including to their personal accounts. Coupled with harassing emails, phone calls, and protesters at healthcare sites, there's elevated and justifiable fear among families, patients, and staff. Okay, so that sentence again is very problematic for the same reason. So are we talking about violence? Are we talking about speech that dissents from the actions that the medical providers in the hospitals are taking? Because if we're talking about actual threats of violence, that's wrong. We can all agree on that. But if we're talking about protesters at the hospital, like what are you talking about, Billboard Chris? You guys know who Billboard Chris is, right? He's the guy that he flies around to children's hospitals all across the country, gender clinics. He stands outside with a billboard, those sandwich boards on the front and the back, and he tries to spark a conversation. He says things like, I don't want to misquote him here, so this is a paraphrase of what he says, but he says like girls can be boys, or girls can't be boys can't be girls, and transing kids is child abuse. He just says like the things that would start a conversation. So what this letter is doing is actually conflating that with a bomb threat. This is not an accident from the AMA and the AAP and the Children's Hospital Association. This is not just stupidity. This is intentional. They are intentionally trying to conflate free speech with actual violence. And this, if we zoom out even from this issue, this is exactly what the radical left has been trying to do for a long time. They've been trying to label your speech and my speech as violence and their violence as free speech. Obviously, that's insane.